In this tutorial I will show you how to make an effect of faux glazed pottery using scraps of canes and all kinds of scraps. I have to tell you that it is better looking if you use something that has more earthy colors, but even with brighter colors it works just fine. So I got a piece of scrap clay to have as a backing, and I'm going to puzzle my and cane remnants there. And yes, I did speed up this quite a bit because you don't want to watch me for minutes and minutes and minutes on end putting this together. If you see, I'm just cutting bits and pieces to cover up the holes in the bigger slices that I have, and so I can arrange them on the piece of scrap clay. The scrap clay is on the thickest setting. Try to bring your slices at about the same thickness. That helps a lot. And then just puzzle them together to form an area that will have uninterrupted clay veneer. And then you can take a piece of wax paper or cling wrap and flatten it a bit with your roller. To, of course, first of all, to make sure that all the pieces are well stuck together, and then get it through the pasta machine on the thickest setting. After which you take a piece of black clay on the thinnest setting possible, and not only that, but try to stretch it a little bit to make it even thinner, and place it on top of your veneer. Actually here I'm placing it exactly backwards, with the black on the working tile and the veneer face down. Your main danger here is to trap air bubbles, so when you get it back up with the white up, check for air bubbles. And not only now, but get this whole thing again through the pasta machine on the thickest setting. And then check again for any possible air bubbles. Then you'll have to use a texture stamp that has very, very deep imprint, and it's not very crowded. As you can see here, I'm using a geometric one. And then you will use exactly the same type of shaving that you use for stamped mokumegane or mica shift. And don't lose your patience and don't shave too deep. First, take away the thickest layer of the black clay. And again, it's very important to use the black clay on a very, very thin setting. And just keep shaving until you start showing the veneer under the black. You will still have the imprint of the stamp all there in black clay. Just as I said, don't lose your patience, don't gouge too deep, because you want to control a little bit to see exactly how much you take, so you'd leave only the lines of the stamp in black there. This is another version, if you want, of that inverse satin slice that I showed you. After which you flatten it a bit, and then, because you don't want to be too thin, I actually place another piece of scrap clay underneath it to make it a little bit thicker, because otherwise it's really thin at this point after you have shaved it and you have flattened it. You want something that would be not thinner than your thicker setting on the pasta machine. Just don't get it through the pasta machine again. Use the scrap clay on a medium setting and see how pretty it looks. It almost looks like a painting, and definitely like a painted glazed pottery looks like. And once again, the trick is to use some earthy colors. It doesn't even have to be cane scrap. It can be just scrap clay or even brand new clay in earthy colors. And then I'm going to get some cookie cutters and cut me some shapes for a pendant and some earrings. I'll make the pendant round with the bail being part of the pendant. And I'm using the cling wrap to get nice, pretty, rounded cuts. And I will use that small oval for the bail, and you will see why I want to do this. And then I'm using the oval cutters for the earrings. I usually cut several extra pieces because, you know, maybe one day I'll use them for something. Hence I do from time to time these stashes, because I realize that no, I'm not going to do anything with that. I don't have time to do it. But anyway, I suggest that you press using an acrylic block. You might have the cling wrap stuck to some areas of the clay. It's fine, just use your X-Acto knife to remove it. But if you cut this way, you will have very little need for sanding, and you will have beautiful rounded edges of your cut piece. And now I need to bake them, obviously, right? So I'm going to first clean the edges nicely, and then I will bake them between two tiles. Remember, always place paper, sandwich the piece between sheets of paper. Don't let it be directly on the tile, or you will get very shiny surfaces that are very unsightly when the pieces are baked. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have left all this on, but oh well. See, and you can also, of course, make beads with this. Leave the veneer thinner and just cover beads with this. One small advice, don't do like I did. Clean your roller before doing this, because otherwise the clay will stick quite a bit. But yeah, and then put another piece of paper on top, then put another tile on top and bake. I usually bake at half an hour at 275. And this is how it looks like when it's baked, sanded and buffed. It looks pretty much like glazed pottery. Now on the pendant I am going to put some backing, because I want it a little bit heavier. So I'm placing some bacon bond and smear it really good all over the place. After which I'm taking a sheet of clay on the third thinnest setting, and placing it on the back of the pendant. And it's time for gloves because I don't want to leave any kind of fingerprints. This is another time where you want to check for air bubbles, because here you have a potential of trapping air pockets. Lift the sheet of clay to cover the edges. The clay will already be a little bit smeared with a bacon bond or liquid clay if that's what you want to use. Then do a first rough trim of the excess. Make sure that all the clay is nicely stuck on all the edges. And again, check for air bubbles, air pockets. And then do a really nice final trim. And then you can take, because we are trying to put baked clay on raw clay, take a little bit of liquid clay and smooth those edges, because the liquid clay will dissolve a little bit the other clay. Just here you have to be careful and sand that area, because you'll have there two different types of plasticizers that are not perfectly combined, and in time the edge of your pendant might start flaking. Remove the middle and there in the hole and kind of smooth it out. And then I am using here another one of my textured beads. Textured beads are absolutely awesome to make textures, especially on small pendants like this. And see, I still discover little air pockets there. I'm trying to make sure that there aren't any showing up, because when you move the clay a little bit left and right, you might have some more showing. And then see, I'm using that textured bead to make a pretty texture on the back, and then it's ready to be baked. On the earrings now, I am not going to put any kind of backing because I don't want them to be too bulky. So I'm going to use just some liquid Sculpey black. And the thing with this is one thing that irritates me to no end. They have that stopper piece of foil not stuck to the bottle, but all the way at the end of the cap, behind all those ridges that screw the cap in. So it took me about 10 minutes to take it off. This can be honestly only surpassed of all the Sculpey products by this, because the chances of you getting cut when you're putting those handles on are very high. So anyway, I am placing some of that black liquid Sculpey on the back of the earring pieces and just gently push it around. It is a self-leveling pretty much like a resin, so once you are sure that you reaches all the edge all around, just let it sit for a minute or so, and then you can bake it. And I baked it at 15 minutes at 275. You can harden it some more with the heat gun. Just be very careful because it's black. You will not see and figure out if you're too close. So if you're not very used to the heat guns, you need to move the heat gun very, very fast sideways. And now we are going to do a very different bail type thing. So you see, I have a crochet, I have some black macrame, and a steel wire collar. Oh, watch out what I'm doing. I'm going underneath, and I'm going to try and focus the camera as well as I can. so you can see what I'm doing. So again, I'm going through the bail hole, picking up the thread and then pulling through. And you can do this part as wide as you want. You can do it as wide as the whole width of that hole. And it depends, of course, on the shape you chose for your pendant and the shape you chose for the bail hole. I'm not going to do it all the way. I'll do it for about half the width of that bail hole. And then once you're at the end, just simply turn around and continue a simple crochet going the other way. And again, how many lines of that you do, it's entirely up to you. You can do it longer, you can do it shorter. The thing is that at one point you will have to do a double at the ends, because see, when you have a pendant that is round like this, because otherwise your crochet bail will be a little bit rounded instead of being more straight. So at the very ends, do a double, and you'll see at the on the second row that I do of this, I do a double. So I go in one eye and then I go again in the same eye, so it would be a little bit wider and it will hug more closely that steel wire necklace collar, however you want to call it. Then once you got there, and again it depends how long you want to do that, then you need to attach it to the collar itself. And you can use a leather string instead of this wheel collar, and you do the exact same thing that you did for starting the whole thing on the pendant. So go underneath, grab the thread and then pull it through. And then try not to drop the thread like I do, but it's fixable, it's always fixable. Now remember, I'm doing this very far from my eyes. I'm practically watching the monitor to see what I'm doing, not the piece itself. I'm going to become as specialized as a surgeon. I realize that if I don't take my glasses off and I start watching the monitor when I do these close-ups, I am less prone to get out of the camera view. And then once you get to the end, just do a double knot, so you make sure that your whole concoction will not unravel. And then trim the ends. I was too lazy to go grab a nail clipper. But this is pretty much how it looks like. And you can, you know, place beads, so some beads on that macrame, crocheted macrame, to embellish it some more. Now let's move to the earrings. The earrings, as you can see, they did not lose the buff when baked. If they do, you might just need to buff a little bit once again. I am going to use this small drill bit that of everything that I've tried is the best ever. And I think I talked about it before. It has diamond bits and it even goes through stone, and it's very easy to use. And now when I do that, I will stop as soon as my finger feels the tip of the drill bit, and then I will go the other way This you can actually find in my Amazon influencer store, and it's around $10, $12, something like that, and it comes with a whole bunch of drill bits. I want to make the holes a little bit bigger, but whenever you need a bigger hole in a polymer clay, always go successively, you know, start with the small drill bit and just go drill your holes, and then use one that's a little bit bigger, and once you're done with that, use another one that's even bigger than that, until you get to drill a hole that is exactly as your need is, depending on the gauge of the wire you use, or leather cord, or Buna cord, or whatever you decide to use there. So I'm going to go for an even larger one, because I want to use a 22 gauge wire there. And again, every time you see that I hold my finger there so I can feel when the tip of the bit comes out on the other side, and I stop, pull the bit out, and then go the other way. And that way you won't have any kind of crumbling where the bit comes out of the clay. Now I have about 3 inches of 22 gauge wire, and I am going to form a wrapped loop. And you'll see me doing here a little bit of an unusual way, but this is for hands with arthritis, so this is the way old ladies do it. So yeah, don't go more than 2 or 3 loops, cut the excess. And then I'm going to use these beads, wooden beads, that match so nicely the generally tribal look. And always when you do the loop on top, consider how your earring piece is, to decide how you need the direction you need to do your loop in. And there we are, it's ready to go on the earring. And it's ready to go as usual on the earring backwards. And then we need to take it out. I do that all the time. I have no idea why. But anyway, there's your little tribal set. And happy claying.